What is up, my friends and fellow BusyBees? The first month of the year is already over, just like that. How are we all feeling? Like, it was just yesterday that we were celebrating New Year's, right? Yeah, same here. This month has been an absolute blur, but I've got to admit, it's been jammed-packed with a lot of great stuff. My husband and I just got back on Friday from a week's holidays down in Mexico. We were in La Cruz, which is just outside Puerto Vallarta, and joined my parents there who had rented a house, and it was a great time. The weather was a 10 out of 10 all day, every day. The food we had was amazing. We randomly found the best barbecue place that had the tastiest ribs I've ever had. And of course, the tacos were incredible. And it was just really nice to spend some time unplugged from social media and just take it easy. But I'm so glad to be back and so ready to tackle some new projects. A couple days after we got back from Mexico, we also got to pick up our little bundle of joy. If you haven't yet seen on my Instagram, my husband and I got a new puppy, and it's honestly disgusting how obsessed we are with him. His name is Yukon, and he's a Bernese Mountain Dog and Giant Alaskan Malamute mix. And obviously, I am incredibly biased, but I'm pretty sure he's the top 3 cutest puppies to ever exist, but you can go peep some photos and be the judge of that yourself. What I can confirm is that playing with a puppy, though it can be a bit tiring after a while, is definitely good for the soul. By the end of the day, my cheeks have been literally aching from smiling so much, so yeah, that's where I'm at. So if you're ever in need of a pick-me-up, just tune into my stories on Instagram because that has basically turned into a live stream feed of this little guy. Hashtag sorry not sorry. So because we have already very quickly whipped through the first month of the year, it's the time we need to be thinking about taxes for our small businesses. Depending where you live, you may have a shorter or longer timeline to get them fully accomplished, but here in Canada, I live in Ontario, we have until April 30th to have our taxes completed and submitted. However, that doesn't mean that we are waiting until like April 25th to start looking at our receipts, income, and expenses for last year and doing a mad dash waiting until we're down to the wire to get it done, right? Right? Okay, good. That's what I thought. And don't get me wrong, I'm typically someone who leaves things until the last minute and then justifies it by saying things like, I just work well under pressure. Having an upcoming deadline really puts my butt into gear, and I always end up getting it done. I got myself through many a university essay taking that route, but in the case of doing your taxes for your business and also your personal taxes, I don't recommend it. Sometimes it can take longer than expected to find all your receipts and invoices and get them organized, especially if you haven't been keeping track of them throughout the year in preparation for this. And then having to get everything tallied and ready to go, and then actually preparing the return and either getting it sent in physically or submitting it online. There's also always the possibility of glitches or something being down or not working properly on the technology side, as well as the fact that you can come across something that you're not sure how to handle it or what to file it under or something like that. So that could slow you down if you need to stop what you're doing and either do some research to find out the answer or reach out to someone who knows, like a tax professional. If you plan to have someone else complete your tax return on your behalf or alongside you to help walk you through the process so that you can do it yourself in the future, then they're also going to be incredibly busy around the deadline time, and it will be hard, if not impossible, to get in with somebody on your schedule. So do your due diligence and start tackling it now, and you will thank yourself later, I promise. Starting earlier also allows you to be able to break the process up into smaller chunks of time if you prefer to do so, instead of just deep diving and immersing yourself in the exciting world of taxes for hours and hours on end all at once. Alright, so I've said my part, so if you end up getting lazy or forgetting and leaving it until the last minute and make your own life difficult, don't come complaining to me, got it? Alright, cool. So in today's episode, I thought it would be helpful to just walk through some of the things that I do when it comes to taxes for my furniture painting and refinishing business, in hopes that it helps out some of you out there that maybe are new to having to complete yours, or help to make it seem more accessible and not so scary to those of you that might be thinking of creating your own official furniture painting and refinishing business. And for those of you out there who are well seasoned in this area and already know what's up, hopefully you learn a thing or two as well. Now I'm adding context and a disclaimer here that I am still in the first few years of my business, and so I'm still always learning too. Nothing in this episode today is official tax or financial advice. I am not trained in those subjects, so just use this episode as a starting point to get you thinking about your own taxes and business expenses, and do not treat it as official information. Do your own research, and I always recommend talking to someone licensed and experienced to discuss your situation. Firstly, because even if you plan to complete your own tax return, they will help guide you in the right direction so you do it correctly from the get-go. They can also speak to your specific business and the way it is set up by asking you questions and getting more details, and they will know the laws and regulations where you live. Again, I'm in Canada, but even if you are a Canadian listening in, make sure to consult with a CPA, accountant, or other tax expert. Now, some people are scared of the word taxes. They don't necessarily understand them, which is fair because nobody teaches this in school. They think they're bad or they're going to get in trouble or do it wrong. And some people even avoid officially registering their business and making it official to avoid having to deal with and pay taxes. Again, this isn't legal or financial advice, but that is likely against the law in some sort of way where you live. So I highly recommend following the regulations where you are based and just registering and following the appropriate procedures of declaring your income if you are selling painted and refinished furniture pieces. There are many reasons for this. I'm actually thinking that might be able to be its own podcast episode to be able to deep dive into those more, so let me know if that's something that you would be interested in. But at the end of the day, you always come out ahead when you register and declare. And keeping track of your income and expenses for your business can be as technical and organized or as lazy and straightforward as you'd like it to be. If you like to keep things digitally, find a system to keep them online. If you're a pen and paper person, you can absolutely choose to take that route if it is the difference of you doing it or not. Make it your own and choose something that will be easy to upkeep throughout the year, and it'll make your life so much quicker and easier when it comes time to look at those things come tax time. Personally, I use a tax software called QuickBooks, and it works great for me. I've talked about this in more detail in a previous episode, episode 19, where I discuss ways to streamline the admin work in your furniture painting and refinishing business. I'll link to that episode in the show notes, or you can click through to listen to that after you're done this episode in the podcast player that you're listening on if you'd like. But essentially, QuickBooks is my one-stop shop for all things income, expenses, and tax related in my business, and it has been pretty much since the start. I began implementing this early because I knew that I wanted to get familiar with the process early on when I had the time to learn it before things got more busy and hectic in my business. And by now, it's really second nature to me to just go in and record things in there, and I don't really have to think much about it. You can access QuickBooks on your laptop, but I usually just use my phone and their app because it's handy and I have it on me all the time. So I have 4 main things that I track in there: income, expenses, mileage, and invoices and estimates. Let's talk briefly about each of them. Number 1, income. Anytime that I receive money as income for the business, I open up the app and add the income record. I put the date it was received, who from, the amount, a little note for reference of what it was from, like what piece I sold, and there's a feature to either take a photo if I have a paper receipt or bill of sale, or I can upload a photo if I have a screenshot. For example, if I'm paid by e-transfer, or like in the States they have cash apps like Venmo and things like that. We have e-transfer in Canada. I'll just screenshot the confirmation once it has been deposited because that will show me the amount, the way it was received, the name of the person it came from, and it's also time-stamped. Also, side note, but very relevant, keeping your income for the business separate from your personal expenses is what was recommended to me. So if you don't already have a business account open, like a bank account to put your income into, then I would say that might be a good thing to add to the to-do list. Number 2 is expenses. Just like income, anytime I have a business expense that I incur, I open up the app and add an expense record in. Now, sometimes I do this in the moment, and sometimes I wait until I have a few all at once and batch input them, but do what works best for you. If you think you may just keep putting it off and the pile of receipts will grow and you'll build it up as a huge task in your head, just do it one at a time as you get them and knock it off the list. Take it from someone who has made that mistake at the beginning and then had to spend 2 solid hours inputting receipts at 6 a.m. one day so I would stay focused, which isn't the hugest amount of time, but it is super mundane and actually kind of a lot of time to just be repeatedly inputting Home Depot and gas station receipts when you really think about it. Now, there are a lot of different business expenses that can be claimed, and at the end of this episode, we'll walk through some of them quickly to get you started thinking about what would be relevant for you in your furniture painting and refinishing business. Or maybe you're listening in and you have a different kind of small business. They'll apply to you too. So I hop into my QuickBooks app, again, record the date the expense was incurred, the place or person that provided the product or service, categorize it based on the categories they provide, which really conveniently line up with the expense categories when you go to file your taxes. And then again, you can either upload a photo of a screenshot for proof of purchase or take a photo of the physical receipt that you have to keep it in your records. I do also retain those physical receipts as well, just in case I were to ever be audited, and I have a super complex system for keeping those. Pop them in a Ziploc bag with the year written on it and call it a day. Like I said, keep it easy so that you'll maintain your system long term. Number 3 is mileage. I love QuickBooks because you not only have a place to track your mileage that you're doing for your business, but they also give you a couple different ways of doing so. You can either manually go in and record the trips you take, so add in the starting and ending addresses, and then add in your purpose for the trip, and it will calculate the distance you drove. It also saves commonly used purposes in there, which I find convenient because writing in in-home consultation each time or whatever just is more time consuming, so it's just a helpful little feature that it has. Or if you prefer, because it's easier or you might forget to go in and manually add it in, you can also turn on its auto feature and it will track your trips when you're driving, and then you can periodically go in and select which trips were for business purposes and add in any details and then save it. And number 4 is for invoices. I also create and send custom project estimates through QuickBooks, which keeps them all in one place and allows me to customize them as needed. You can then mark them as paid once payment is received, and if you choose to input a due date for the invoice when you first send it out to provide an estimate to the client, it will automatically remind your client of any unpaid invoices as you near the due date. So should you wish to use that feature, it's pretty handy. Saves you time of having to manually go in and send follow-up reminder emails. So for all 4 of those purposes, QuickBooks is super handy, and I just like knowing that I can go into one app for everything that I need and it's all in one place. And then at tax time, I just go in and I can either bring up the overview of the full year or I can email that to myself and keep it for my records. So it's super handy. Now, there are certainly other types of tax software out there, and there are some free versions as well. So feel free to do your own research on what works best for you and your business. But so far, I have been loving QuickBooks, and it has worked great over the last few years for my needs. It has totally taken away the anxiety and dread of tax time for me as a small business owner. And if you're interested in trying it out for yourself, I am a QuickBooks affiliate because I believe in the software so much. So if you want to try it out for yourself, you can click the link in the show notes of this episode and it will get you 30% off your first 6 months with a QuickBooks subscription. And remember, that's an expense that you can write off since you're using it for your business. Does anyone else hear the term write-off and just immediately think of David from Schitt's Creek like me now? It's a write-off. It's when you buy something for your business and the government pays you back for it. Oh, and who pays for it? Nobody. You write it off. So, while, again, I'm not an accountant. I wanted to briefly walk you through some of the categories directly from the CRA's website that might be pertinent to you and your business to claim as business expenses, or otherwise known as a write-off, a tax write-off more specifically. So interest and bank charges. You can deduct interest incurred on money borrowed for business purposes. So that may be a loan, line of credit, that kind of thing. Legal, accounting, and other professional fees. You can deduct fees incurred for external professional advice or services like consulting. Keep that in mind if you need someone to help you get things on track in your furniture painting and refinishing business, as this is a service I do offer. Check out meldiditherself.ca/services for more information. And you can also deduct accounting or legal fees you incur when getting advice or help keeping your records on track, as well as those incurred for prepping and filing your income tax and GST and HST returns if you have those. Management and administration fees. You can deduct management and administration fees, including bank charges that are incurred to operate your business, which also includes charges for processing payments. Think PayPal and Stripe. Office expenses. So this means small items that are needed to run your business, things like pens, pencils, stationery, and stamps. Supplies. Now this is a broad one, but you can deduct the cost of items the business used indirectly to provide goods or services. And telephone. You can deduct the expense for your telephone if you incurred the expense to earn income. For the final time, I am not a tax advisor, so be sure to talk to someone who is qualified, because there's definitely nuances within each of those categories. For example, if you have a telephone, you're probably not exclusively using it for business purposes. You probably also use it personally, so there might be only a percentage of it that you can write off or claim as a business expense. But there are a lot of small expenses that you may be overlooking in your furniture painting and refinishing business when it comes to business expenses, so do be sure to talk to someone who can walk you through it to ensure that you're submitting the most accurate tax return and that you're getting all of the benefits that you're entitled to as a small business owner. If you're interested in another episode where I go through the different elements in my business that I declare as an expense to give you an idea of what that looks like in the context of furniture painting and refinishing business, just let me know by sending me an email, or you can always hop into my DMs over on Instagram at MelDidItHerself. And something you may not know about me, I love little motivational messages. They always get me fired up, and I keep a running list of ones that are especially catchy or speak to me in the Notes app on my phone. So I'm going to end every podcast episode with one of those that I've noted down over the years, in hopes that you leave our time here each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on whatever comes your way this week. So this week's Mel's motivational message is: overthinking equals paralysis by analysis. So it's more of an equation than a message today. But I've talked about this before. We need to avoid that paralysis by analysis, that overthinking things to the point where we do absolutely nothing, because it's really easy to do. You start thinking about all the things that go into a task. You start thinking about all the questions you have about it and all the research that you would have to do in order to answer those questions, the people that you might have to consult with and talk to, the wait times that there might be for that. But spend less time thinking about those things. Maybe get that onto paper if that will help you to be more prepared when you do take that action. But if you are overthinking, try and catch yourself, because ultimately you're going to overanalyze, and that's going to essentially paralyze you from being able to complete that thing that your brain is spending all this time and energy thinking about, and then you just inevitably don't end up truly pursuing. So if you've been thinking about making your furniture painting and refinishing business official, but you had been scared about all the tax related things and registering, and you don't know what to do, and you think it's going to be a lot of work, I hear you. I had those exact same thoughts myself. But I did exactly that. I wrote everything down on paper, and I just set some time aside during my week, and I would go through and research and figure out what I needed to do, who I needed to talk to, what I needed to know in order to set myself up on good footing. And then once I did that, I only had to put that energy into it once, and then I had that knowledge that I can take with me as I move forward. If you haven't heard on previous episodes, I do have a free guide and checklist for starting your own furniture painting and refinishing business. It's always linked in my bios, but I will leave a link in the show notes of this episode as well, because that kind of takes you through the step-by-step of what you need to do if you've been selling your painted and refinished pieces kind of on the down low and using maybe Facebook Marketplace or other platforms online, or maybe just through social media, but you have been just kind of tucking that away as fun money for yourself. I just advise you to make everything official. Like I said, if you're interested in an entire episode of the reasons why, there are so many reasons that have to do obviously with like legal and financial things, but also motivation and the fact that it will make you take your business more seriously and you'll treat it like a business over treating it like a hobby. It really does make all the difference in your perspective and the way that you self-identify as well. So feel free to grab that. Like I said, it's free and it's just a compilation of everything that I learned and that I put together through my own process of figuring this out on my own, because I didn't have somebody who had a document to lay it all out for me at the time. But this overthinking and creating that paralysis by analysis can extend into our personal lives as well. I know there's so many little tasks that I have in my own life that I do this with. On my to-do list for probably about 3 months now has been to complete a will for myself and my husband, and I literally have the tabs open in front of me. I can see them. They've been there for like the entire 3 months. I just keep reopening them if I have to reboot my computer. And it's just because I'm overthinking. I'm like, will I miss something? If I consult with somebody, will it be the right person? Like, you have all these little questions and these things that you think about that in the end, like, don't really matter all that much, because done is better than perfect. Maybe less so in like the context of a will, because that's pretty important. But for the most part, these tasks that we build up in our heads, even things like reorganizing your closet or doing something around your house, there might be a task or a chore that you've been putting off and it's just been building and building, and every day you think about the fact that you should be doing it, but then inevitably you don't, and you just are kind of like shaming yourself and feeling guilty about not doing it. Avoid that overthinking, avoid that overanalysis, and let's just get this shit done and get it off our plate, because we know how good that feels once we just take those steps. It usually takes much less time than we are anticipating it will. And think about how much lighter and more free our brains are going to be and have space for new things to worry about, because inevitably I'm sure we'll find something. All right, that's it for now. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you guys next week.